tell you a little story. Fresh sleep, but it could give you poos gimbals. It's a story for fee folk and biggle-toe peep. That's wee folk and bigger people too. This is a story about Cinderella, who lived in an old hard house with her mean old mep stuther and her two sissy ugglers. And they made her do all the wordy-dirk and dressed her in wordy dags while they sat around all day eating I haven't done this for a long time. Cheating auklets and magging readazines. Well, one day when Cinderella was in the kitchen flopping the more, who should come home but the two sissy ugglers? And they said, guess what? The Pransome Hints is brewing a fancy thresh draw, and we're invited. Too bad you can't come. Well, Cinderella went back into the kitchen with ears in her ties. And she was just about to check a see a frickin' when suddenly there was a blinding flash of light, and right before her very eyes there stood a beautiful berry. And Cinderella said, who are you and what do you want? And so Cinderella said, well, my sissy ugglers say that the Pransome Hints is brewing a fancy thresh draw, and I'd like to go. Well, her fairy godmother said, okay, but you have to be known by midnight. And so off she went. And, well, first of all, the fairy godmother waved her wand, and she was all dressed in a white sound gash, and around her neck she had a necklace of poobies and merles, and on her feet were a tiny pair of sass clippers. And so she went jumped into the pumpkin and went to the castle, and who should be the first poo people she met but the two sissy ugglers. And she was so beautiful that they didn't Cinderize Recognize. So they introduced her to the Pransome Hints. And he said, may I Dave this chance? And while they were dancing, he said, you're so beautiful that you remind me of Beefing Slooty. And he was just about to ask for a mare in handage when suddenly the stroke clartened to strike swell. And Cinderella had the hand for the roll, but on the way one of her tiny sass clippers slipped from her soot. In other words, she slopped her dripper. And so Pransome Hints, he picked it up and he said, now all I have to do is find the woman whose soot the slipper sits, and I will have found the woman that I've lolled in fub with. Well, so he went into town the very next day. He went from house to house, and you just can't change that around. But soon he came to the sin where House Cinderella lived, and he knocked on the door, and who should come to the door but the two sissy ugglers? And he said, I'm looking for the woman whose soot the slipper sits, so I'll know with whom I'm lolled in fub. Well, first sissy ugler tried on the flipper, and of course she said it fitted, but he said no walking fay. No, that's the dirty version. The other sister tried, and it didn't fit, but pretty soon it was Cinderella's turn. And as you recall, the flipper pitted perfectly, and they were married and had lively ever afterwards. And that is the story of Cinderella. But there's a moral to that story, ladies and gentlemen, and it fits very properly with the 9/11 truth movement, because Cinderella never gave up. And that's the moral of the story, is like guys who gave, John Diefenbaker, you remember him? He never gave up. And George Bush, I wish to hell he'd give up. Well, he's doing that shortly. But then there was Dwight Farquhar. You don't remember him, do you? Because he gave up. So you've got to remember this, ladies and gentlemen, that and as you go down the roadway of life, never give up. Because some of our smubbles are trawl, and some of our bubbles are trig. And if our tread had no hubbles, how would we recognize our racing? So, that's the moral of the 9/11 truth movement. we never give up until these guys are in jail and until we get those posters down off those hydro poles. No.